Welcome to Connecting the Dots, a non-traditional legal program with your host and trusted advisor, Liz Myska, your guide through the web of life's dilemmas.
Welcome to another edition of Connecting the Dots. I'm your host, Liz Myska. And today I have the distinct pleasure of having one of the Clerkship students, 2022, the lead Clerkship student, with me. Welcome, Sophie.
Thank you. I guess I should introduce myself.
Yes, please.
Anyways. So my name is Sophie Barlos. I am a second-year medical student at UMass, and we are currently in the midst of a 2-week population health clerkship where our entire class gets separated in about, 30 or so
38
groups?
38.
So almost 40 groups. And they range from, 5 students to about 15, not more than that. And we all get to, explore a different population or different topic in the community of Worcester, and that's why we're here.
Yep, and that's all right. And you're in See It My Way,
Yes.
Clerkship. Even though last week we commingled with living with a disability and injury prevention.
Yes. Yes.
and off camera, you and I, Sophie, were telling our broken bone stories,
Yes.
and maybe this is appropriate for for you as a medical student to tell your own tales of woe.
Oh my gosh. I've definitely had my fair share, that's for sure. I think the first time I broke a bone, I was in the 4th grade. I was just running on the playground, and they rang the bell to say,
Come
once
in.
recess is over, go line up to go back inside. And I just rolled my ankle. And then, I think I just have weak ankles, Curse my mom. She passed that down to me.
And you're not a skater, I take it.
No.
Yeah, okay.
But so I was just rolling my ankle, and it really hurt. But then I walked home, and every step I took walking home, I felt this sharp pain in my ankle. And I got home, I was watching TV. I was like, Mom, my ankle really hurts. And she pulls down my sock. My ankle was
Like a
swollen up. Yeah, so big. So we had to go to the emergency room, get it checked out. I had fractured my growth plate in my ankle. Had to have a cast for, I don't even know how
Really?
many weeks. And then do the PT, but yeah.
Did this stimulate your interest in medicine?
That's a good question.
You're I want to do it to others rather than have it done unto me, right?
I think having gone to the doctor, doing the cast, seeing all the x-rays, I definitely thought, this is cool. Yeah, this is interesting. And, it's happened so many times more. A few years later, I did the same thing on my other ankle, my left ankle.
Oh, equal opportunity.
Yeah. And then my worst injury, though, was a couple years ago. It was my senior year in college, and I played soccer. And it was probably one of the last games of, it was the winter season. We were just playing more for fun, not really a league game. It wasn't for any competition. And I went up for a header, and there was a girl in front of me, and I just hit the back of her head with the front of my head. And immediate black eye, my whole left eye was swollen up immediately. It was a Friday night, so the school doctors, the school sports office was not open until Monday, so I had to go to a walk-in clinic on Saturday morning at 7 a.m. And the guy was like, okay, I'll get some x-rays. And then he's trying to examine my eye. He goes, can you open your eye any further? And I said, no.
It's as far as it's going to get, right? Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so then, they couldn't really tell in the x-ray if anything was broken, so I had to go to the emergency room the following day to get a CT scan. And then they said that my orbital floor was fractured, and part of the fatty tissue around my eye had been pulled underneath the fracture, and so it was restricting my eye movement. So when I looked up, my vision would go double. And
even though we're talking about vision things, yeah. I'm like,
Yeah.
Okay, so keep going.
So then the worst part about this was it was the end of my senior year, so I was I had to finish my thesis. I had a couple finals to do, but here I was, traveling from Montreal back to Boston to go to Mass Eye and Ear to get a surgery to get my plate put in my face to fix my eye.
Wow.
But now it's all good.
Okay.
But now I do have a plastic plate in my face.
Were you worried at any point in time that you were going to lose sight? This is interesting.
Actually, I never thought about that.
I never thought about that.
I don't think so, because I went to the ophthalmologist as part of the workup. But they just to look at my eye and my retina, and they said there was no damage to anything like that, and if there was any flashing or something like that, they would be concerned about a retinal detachment.
Yeah.
But there wasn't anything like that. The only thing that really, I would say the thing that impaired me the most was after the surgery. I had to put some gel kind of in my eye to keep it sterile or make sure it doesn't get infected or anything. And it was so blurry, and my left eye was my like good eye. My right eye, I have like astigmatism in it, so I couldn't read anything. I was trying to write my thesis, and my vision was so blurry, I couldn't see, but it cleared up. So
wow,
that worked out.
So you have had an experience of being a VIP, a visually impaired person,
yes.
even though you know.
That's true.
Wow.
Yeah. It was probably the scariest injury I've had because, so my eye blew up, like my whole face blew up. Super dark black eye. But now we're...
Wow. Are there any pictures of you with it? I'm just thinking
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I'm
just thinking that would be interesting. So that hasn't piqued your interest in eye care. You're still thinking... you still haven't made a decision.
I haven't made a decision yet. I don't know if eye care is for me. Okay. I gotta say, because earlier this week we had that presentation by I think Dr. Sampson, one of the ophthalmology residents at UMass, and he was telling us about all different sorts of eye diseases. And I was looking at the pictures, and I was thinking, oh man, I don't know. I don't know if I can do it.
Well, so interestingly, because during that session, I was not looking at the pictures because I couldn't see the pictures, so I was listening, and it just very much struck me that the presenter, Dr. Sampson, was how clinical and matter of fact he was.
Yes.
And the way, and again, I'm not trying to be derogatory, but the way he was just saying, oh, that's really nasty. And I'm thinking, yeah, if it was in your eye, it would be really, really nasty. And it would not be, you'd be freaked out. You'd be freaked out.
Definitely
and you would be thinking, again, am I going to lose my sight?
Right.
And how am I going to function if I lose my sight, or I can't drive, or and all of the what ifs rather than the what is. And I guess that's probably a good place to start, because this clerkship is intended for the sighted students to see it differently than normal, meaning see it from the perspective of the visually impaired, not the sighted. Mm-hmm. And just the reaction that you had as a sighted person looking to those pictures and thinking, oh no, not for me. Imagine being the patient thinking, oh my gosh, what's in store for me?
Right.
And I also thought, and correct me if you didn't get this impression, that the doctor knew what to diagnose, or looking at something, oh, that's it's in the eyelid, or we laser this, or we use antibiotics. So he knew treatment, and he could deduce what it was, but he couldn't tell the patient, okay, here's how to live your life. Did that strike you?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that throughout this clerkship has been reinforced, that as a doctor or a future doctor, you need to know the pathology and how to treat it, or what you can or can't do to treat. But I think we've learned so much about going through the different resources in the community, like the low vision and learning about using a white cane, mobility, and like service dogs and things like that. How beneficial it would be if your doctor could say, here are your medical treatments, but also here are all the resources, that would help you live your life as a person also. And I think we're trying to get to that, especially there's a lot of social workers now working in hospitals, and to link people with a continuity of care from medical to, regular life. But if your doctor at least had a little bit of comfort or knowledge in the
Yeah,
field, at
empathy.
least you could introduce the concept
Right.
in a relatable way.
Right. And I think that, every profession is going to say, well, that would be for sub-staff or another profession. But I really think, and that's why I was keen to work with medical students, just like I was keen to work with optometry students, that yes, you're busy, but I think you need to know the resources. So it's not just like, well, that's not my department. Like, again, like being a surgeon, I just cut people. I don't do any of the other stuff. I don't heal you. And another thing that you said, and you made me think about this, when Dr. Sampson was talking about the pathology and et cetera, he mentioned, well, we refer people to the low vision clinic. It was very interesting to me that he never used the word blind. And again, I think that's deliberate, because you don't want to tell a patient, you're blind, because, or there's nothing, in essence, you're saying there's nothing I can do for you, because those words are just, they're so inhospitable and they're so shocking, and it's so, that's so unnerving. And so again, I had to kind of smile when he said, oh, we refer people to low vision, but it's kind of like, well, they're not really low vision, they're blind, but we can't use that word because that would upset the apple cart. So instead, but again, he was like, we refer them. So all he knew was not our department.
Right.
We push them out. And that's the other thing that I try to bring out with the clerkship. When I go into a setting where there's something designated or designed for blind people, I always feel like I'm being pushed into that space. Like, oh, you've been identified as blind because you use a white cane. You identify as blind because you identify as a visually impaired person. So hence, we're pushing you into that space, like the talking book library in the library. And for me, that chafes me, because I'm like, I want to determine which spaces I occupy. Yes, I'm glad you're giving me an option that's a space for me, but I don't want you to conclude, or I don't want to conclude there's no place for me other places within this building. And I know it's not intentional, but that's how I feel. That's how. And that's one of the reasons many of my initiatives, like when I'm a lawyer, and I was never the type of lawyer that would litigate cases, but yes, I do have to go to courthouses in order to conduct my business. And once I started losing my sight, it was kind of like, whoa, I'm thinking, how am I going to get in the door? How am I going to get through a metal detector? How am I going to get into an elevator? How am I going to get up to a registry office? Yes, I can develop those skills, but I really need other people, whether it's security or whether it's counter staff, whether it's other attorneys, whether it's judges. I need them to understand.
Right, it's the awareness.
Exactly, that you may be talking to me and I don't know that you're talking to me. You may be handing me something and I don't know that you're handing me something. So you need to develop these skills too, and that's why having any of these initiatives or clerkships, bringing you students in one-on-one and understanding, you may be talking to me, Sophie, but I don't know that you're talking to me because you're not using my name. You're looking at me and I can't see you. And I think that's so important for medical doctors, because you can spout off a whole bunch of stuff and then be like, okay, you must be talking to me because I'm the only one in the room, but I don't understand what you're saying because you're using lingo, you're using terminology, you're talking around it, you're talking at it, you're not talking to me. So all that interpersonal communication becomes so important.
I think that is what actually drew me to WalkFit in the first place, was building like a familiarity to be confident enough to walk up to somebody who's visually impaired or a white cane user or who has a guide dog and say, at least have one sentence where I say, my name is Sophie, I see you're using a white cane, how can I help you? And that's actually so funny that you bring it up, because earlier this morning I was with one of my classmates, and she was telling me that she had a hospital session or something a couple days ago, and she had her first patient who was blind in the room, and she was realizing that she was handing her patient her shoe and was thinking, wait, which, is it the left shoe or the right shoe? She couldn't find the words of how to describe where the shoe was, which one it was, how to hand it to her patient. And she felt she was stumbling. And I thought, wow, this is exactly what this clerkship is for. Like, this is why we're practicing these skills. So ideally, when you encounter patients or just people in the world, you have some inkling of what's the best way to move forward.
Right.
Or some familiarity with it.
And not be embarrassed.
Right.
And not avoid the situation, like, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to turn my back, and they're not going to know, or I'm going to mumble.
Right.
You're reminding me, not a story that has to do with me, but a colleague of mine who was totally blind was in a hospital, and the hospital, this was in the past 20 years, the hospital had automated attendance so in other words, a robot that would come into the room and act as the custodian. Okay. So this totally blind person is in the bed, and the door opens, and the totally blind person's like, I'm like, who's there? And she hears this, and then all of a sudden, she hears this trash can, being picked up, and she's like, excuse me, who's there? And of course, it's not responding to her, and she's terrified. She's like, what the heck is going on? Because she couldn't see anything, and no one had explained, And so again, oftentimes we're at a disadvantage, which it's scary, and you're thinking, no, that could have been avoided if there had been a description. But I understand in the hospital you are looking, you're there for a purpose, and staff is looking after you for that purpose, and that is causing me to digress about my mother, who was not visually impaired, but she had to have toes amputated because she was a non-compliant diabetic, and then she got C. diff, and so I insisted that she go from the rehab facility with the C. diff back into the hospital, and this was shortly after she had the amputation. And I went into the hospital, and her bloody stump is protruding from the bed. And I said, Mom, when was the last time your bandage got changed? And she said, I don't know. So I rang the nurse, and the nurse was like, well, that's not this unit. I said, I beg your pardon?
Interesting.
It was just like, I beg your pardon? Yeah. I was like, So it happened that the surgeon who had performed the amputation was also in the hospital. So I rang his department, and then he came up with the wound care, nurse. But I was just like flabbergasted. I was like, wait a minute. I mean, like, aren't you treating the whole body, not just a part of the body? Quickly, because I'm sure we're running out of time. I mean, do you see that in your medical education? I guess that, like the kidney person is the kidney doctor is just concentrating on that. The heart specialist is concentrating on that. Is there anything that you've experienced thus far in your education where it's more holistic, and do you think it needs to be more holistic, or do you anticipate that will come in the future?
I think, first of all, I think that's a great question. And, but I think that is something that is being enforced, at least in our medical education, is that no matter what level you are at or what you are supposed to be treating, there's still a person in front of you. And, we also, you learn the difficulties of, when you're actually working. We haven't experienced what it's like to actually be working a 24-hour shift, and you're completely tired, and you try to do that mindfulness where you put the hand sanitizer before you knock in the room, take a second to just compose yourself, and no matter how much trouble there's been going on during the day, you're focused on this one person in front of you. That's something that we talk about a lot, and I think in practice it's always harder to have it play out exactly how you want it to. But hopefully we want everyone to to be like that. So.
Well, I think also that, and I can't speak to this as eloquently as Dr. Mike, my a co-faculty member of the clerkship, but in medical education, as I understand it, they show it to you, you mimic, and then, or you observe, you mimic, and then supposedly you're proficient. and I can tell you, as a lawyer, you got to practice. Meaning you got to practice and practice and practice, because even though you have the academic credentials, there's nothing like being thrown into a situation and then trying to puzzle it out, like, what is this? And to relate it to the clerkship, I think Dr. Mike, in giving you those scenarios, he wanted you to see, the young woman who, was driving her kids to school, was diabetic, and was in the car accident, and thinking of, like, what else is going on here, and how can I bring my medical skills to bear on this, and again, whom can I refer? And I guess that's another thing as a lawyer. I'm always looking for that other professional that I feel like I'm the handoff person, not an underling says, oh, you should call, Dr. So-and-so, or you should call this physical therapist, or you should call this psychologist. I do that. In other words, I refer my client, and that's what I would like for doctors to refer patients, to say, you have a legal problem. You have a, you or your child have, mental health issues. Here are the people that I can refer you to and trust, as opposed to, call the Commission for the Blind, call the, the Department of Mental Health, call Elder Services, because those systems, yes, they exist, and I'm not trying to downgrade them, but that's you're putting somebody into, like, a jungle, and it's really difficult to maneuver, particularly if you're compromised. So that's what I'm hoping also will be a byproduct of this clerkship, that that there'll be. I'm hoping that we will get to write curriculum for medical students and nursing students, so that this will become just part of the repertoire.
Okay.
So I want to hear any final thoughts you have to say about this experience, the clerkship experience, or WalkFit, or your future.
Wow.
I know, really. I know. So you can pull in everything.
I think I'll just talk to the clerkship. I actually really enjoyed, since I've been with WalkFit for over a year now, I actually really enjoyed combining with our fellow students and getting more of them to experience the trial by Liz. Because I think it really expands, I think, their understanding, and it's fun for everybody involved, but also has a really important learning element to it. And I think we had a good time learning and teaching. So again, you guys were strutting your stuff. Yeah. Which I love that. Right. That you have the confidence. And that's my goal. Right. And that's how I was telling you how I just was in Harvard Square last weekend, and I was noticing hazards and truncated domes that weren't pointing you right across the intersection, and I was noticing all these things, not even in the context of Worcester, but in the context of everything in my life. So and as you just said about your colleague that had a blind patient. Right. Now you've become sensitized, and what you do with it, is your choice, but at least the door has been opened, so you've moved from the unaware to the aware, and you've been activated. So thank you, Sophie. You're doing a great job in this clerkship, and and again, much appreciated with all you've done for WalkFit too, and putting together the day of service too. Yes. That was great. So thank you. Great. Well, thank you. Join me for another edition of Connecting the Dots.
Please note that the information provided in this show is not a substitute for consulting with an experienced local attorney and receiving counsel based on the facts and circumstances of a particular transaction. To contact Lizbeth, email her at lisbeth@elizabethlmyska.com or call her office at 508-753-7681. We're online at connectingthedots.lawyer. Executive producers, Liz Myska and Jack Peacock. Producers, John Medberry and Bill Hamilton. A production of Elizabeth L. Myska, J.D., LLM, in association with Compliments.
In uncertain times, what can you be sure about? The sun rises in the east. What goes up must come down. Night follows day. Well, here's something else. When it comes to dealing with debt collectors, federal law gives you rights. For example, debt collectors can't call before 8 in the morning or after 9 at night. Can't curse or insult you. Can't demand that you pay more than you owe. Can't lie about anything. They can't say that papers they send you are legal forms if they're not. Nor can they make up consequences for not paying your debt. And they can't call you at work if your employer doesn't allow it. You also have the right to stop debt collectors from calling you. How do you do that? You have to notify them in writing. Sending them a letter should stop the phone calls, but of course, it doesn't wipe out your debt. There's helpful information about dealing with debt at ftc.gov/moneymatters, a website from the Federal Trade Commission. It explains the rules of behavior for debt collectors. Take a look. There are some that may surprise you. If your debts have gone into collection, remember that you have rights. Asserting your rights doesn't make your debt go away, but it does give you a voice. The more you know about how to manage your debt and deal with debt collectors, the better off you can be. After all, money matters. If you think that a debt collector has violated the law, report it. File your complaint with the Federal Trade Commission at ftc.gov/complaint. Your complaint gives law enforcement a lead to follow up on and may stop it from happening to someone else. The Federal Trade Commission is the nation's consumer protection agency. For more tips on credit and debt, visit ftc.gov/moneymatters or 1-877-FTC-HELP. 1-877-382-4357.
Movement. Along with weight loss, it's one of the many ways to fight osteoarthritis pain. For more information on managing pain, go to fightarthritispain.org.